Imagine sending 50,000 armed men into a sun-scorched desert and never hearing from them again. No bodies, no weapons, no remnants, just silence. The desert didn't fight back, it simply erased them. This isn't fiction. This is one of the greatest disappearances in human history. And no one, not even the most advanced science, can explain what happened. In the year 525 BC, under the merciless Egyptian sun, an army marched into the desert with supreme confidence. 50,000 seasoned Persian soldiers, commanders appointed directly by Cambyses, the second son of Cyrus the Great. Their destination, the Oracle of Amun, buried deep in the remote Siwa oasis. Cambyses, having already conquered Egypt, stayed behind. He believed the Siwa oracle represented the final piece to secure his legitimacy. Control the voice of the gods, and you control belief itself. So he sent a force disciplined, well-provisioned, and led by trusted officers to claim it. And then, they disappeared. Not in battle, not to rebellion, not even to plague. They were simply gone. Every man, every camel, every drop of water, every glint of bronze, gone. Herodotus, writing just a few decades later, claimed the army was swallowed by a sandstorm of divine wrath. That the desert rose up like a sea and buried them alive. That story echoed through the centuries, echoed so loudly that few ever questioned it. But let's take a step back. What happens when 50,000 people vanish without leaving behind a single identifiable trace? Not a helmet, not a bone, not a broken chariot wheel. In normal circumstances, armies leave behind camps, trash pits, graves, rusted weapons. History is built on such debris, and yet here, there's nothing. Even modern search teams using satellites and ground-penetrating radar have found no conclusive evidence. Several expeditions have scoured the western desert. They've uncovered Roman artifacts, ancient bones, but never anything that definitively belonged to Cambyses' campaign. It's as if this army walked off the edge of the earth. Some historians argue the army simply got lost, died of thirst, and were buried by the dunes over time. But 50,000 men? Spread over miles? Not a single piece of armor sticking up from the sand? The odds of total erasure stretch the limits of natural possibility. Could there have been sabotage? Egyptian guides leading the force astray into a dead end of dunes and death? Could there have been a trap and ambush so efficient that not even news of its occurrence escaped? Or could the Siwa oracle have been more than a temple, something that, if threatened, triggered consequences beyond comprehension? In a world obsessed with proof, this story offers none, only silence. And in that silence, the sand whispers a question science has never answered. How does a perfectly organized force with the might of an empire behind it vanish completely, leaving not a clue, but a legend? Now imagine the desert swallowing that army without a whisper. No final cry, no clash of swords, no desperate retreat. Just the silent shifting of ancient sands, erasing the footprints of 50,000 men. Modern historians struggle to accept such an outcome. Armies don't just disappear. They leave behind camps, bones, equipment, something. And yet in this case, the desert remains silent. Even aerial surveys, ground-penetrating radar, and modern archaeological expeditions find nothing. Not a single bronze buckle, not one rusted spearhead, no remnants of boots or saddles. Some suggest the desert winds buried everything over time. But how does sand conceal 100,000 souls so completely? Even natural disasters leave clues. Mass burials, crushed weapons, torn fabrics. But the western desert offers none of this. Instead, it holds its breath, its surface unbroken, as though it resents the question. This absence of evidence has given rise to darker theories. Betrayal. Could the army's Egyptian guides have misled them intentionally, driven them into deadly terrain as revenge for invasion? Cambyses relied heavily on local knowledge to cross the desert. If that knowledge was false or malicious, the army could have wandered into regions with no hope of return. Quicksand, blinding mirages, dry basins masquerading as oases, all fatal. Or perhaps something even more deliberate. An ambush? Could desert tribes have waited for the moment the Persian army was weakest, then struck and erased every trace? History is filled with such ambushes, silent, swift, total. Yet again, no bones, no broken weapons, no signs of conflict, just sand. Some point to Herodotus. The ancient historian wrote of this lost army in vivid detail, claiming a sandstorm engulfed them whole. One moment they marched in formation. The next, a wall of dust and wind towered over them. When it passed, there was nothing. Herodotus paints a cinematic scene, but is it history or myth? Sandstorms do occur, but could even the fiercest truly annihilate so vast a force? Others doubt the account entirely. No contemporary Egyptian record mentions the army's fate. No letters, no inscriptions. It's as though the Persians never marched into the desert at all, which opens the door to speculation. Could the army have perished somewhere else entirely? Could the entire tale be a diversion, a political cover-up for a failed campaign, or a rebellion that turned deadly? In a world of empires and legends, rewriting history wasn't uncommon. Still, no credible evidence has surfaced to support any alternate theory, which leaves us again with nothing. Nothing but questions, sand, and the ghost of an army swallowed by silence. For centuries, explorers have combed the western desert, hoping to solve the mystery. In 1996, Italian researchers Angelo and Alfredo Castiglione claimed to discover ancient artifacts near Siwa bones, weapons, and jewelry. For a moment, it seemed the lost army had been found. But testing later showed the items belonged to Roman-era travelers, not Persians. A dead end. And so, the desert mystery persists. As technology advances and satellites scan more deeply, hope remains. Perhaps one day a clue will surface, a broken helm, a buried standard, a half-buried skeleton. Until then, the western desert of Egypt keeps its secret, and we are left with a story where 50,000 men marched into history and were never heard from again. High in the Indian Himalayas, above 16,000 feet where oxygen is thin and winds howl without mercy, lies a lake the size of a classroom. Calm, still, frozen most of the year. On the surface, it looks unremarkable. Just a quiet pool nestled among jagged cliffs and snow-covered ridges. But look beneath the surface, and you'll see something that defies explanation. Hundreds of human skeletons scattered across the bottom and along the rocky shoreline. Some so well preserved you can still see the shape of their skulls, their femurs, their empty eye sockets peering upward through crystal clear ice. Rupkund Lake, better known as Skeleton Lake, wasn't discovered in ancient times or by an explorer chasing myth. It was a forest ranger who first reported the bones in 1942 while mapping the region. He thought he'd stumbled on a battlefield, perhaps soldiers from some forgotten war, lost in a mountain skirmish. But there was no sign of conflict, no weapons, no armor, no campfires or battle lines, just bones, clean, scattered, abandoned. As more scientists arrived, they found the mystery deepening. These weren't just the remains of one group, one event, one tragedy. Some bones were from people who had died over 1,000 years ago. Others were more recent, just a few centuries old. And then came the strangest discovery of all. Genetic testing revealed that some of the dead weren't locals. They weren't even from India. One group came from the Mediterranean. Their DNA linked them to places like Crete and Greece. What were Greek travelers doing high in the Indian Himalayas, centuries apart from each other? And why did none of them survive? There were no trade routes passing here, no known pilgrimages connecting these regions, and nothing in ancient records mentioned such a journey. Even more baffling, there were no signs of disease or battle trauma. Most of the skulls had massive blunt force injuries, cracks in the bone consistent with being struck from above. But with what? There were no weapons at the scene. No clubs, no arrows, no signs of ambush. One theory emerged early on, and it came not from science, but from legend. Local folklore speaks of a wrathful goddess. According to this tale, a king and his entourage once passed through the mountains on a pilgrimage. But they broke sacred customs. The goddess, offended, sent a storm of giant hailstones from the heavens. The king, his queen, his warriors were killed by the sky itself. For years, scientists dismissed this as myth. But then they studied the skull fractures more closely. The patterns, the shape, the angles, all consistent with injuries caused by hailstones, not the kind we know today. These were ice projectiles the size of baseballs, falling from miles above. Could nature really be that violent? Could a freak hailstorm have wiped out entire groups of travelers centuries apart? And if so, why this place? Why did people keep coming here? People from different countries, centuries, and cultures, only to die in silence beneath the same sky? The questions remain unanswered, and the bones remain, slowly surfacing each year as the ice retreats with warming temperatures. No messages, no inscriptions, just hundreds of skeletons scattered in a circle around a quiet, frozen lake. Scientific efforts to explain the deaths at Rupkund Lake have only made the mystery more unsettling. Early carbon dating suggested the bones belonged to a single event around the 9th century. That made sense at first, a single doomed pilgrimage group caught in a freak mountain storm. But then came the 2019 genetic study. A team of scientists from Harvard and India analyzed 38 skeletons using high-resolution DNA sequencing. What they found was shocking. The skeletons didn't belong to one group, or even one century. They belonged to people who died as far back as 800 AD, and others who perished nearly 200 years later, in the 1800s. Some were of South Asian ancestry, consistent with Indian pilgrims. Others came from the Eastern Mediterranean, most likely from Crete or mainland Greece. Still others bore genetic markers linked to Southeast Asia. These people had no cultural, religious, or political connection to each other. Their clothes were plain. No jewelry, no religious artifacts, no weapons, no scrolls or writing, just travelers from different times and places, all ending up at the same isolated spot, dying in silence. One possible explanation is that the lake served as a pilgrimage site over the centuries, sacred, mysterious, deadly. But there's no inscription, no monument, no ancient record that mentions such a journey. Even local traditions are vague, passed down through oral stories about gods and curses. And if it were a sacred site, why is there so little evidence of repeated visits? No temples, no offerings, no markings. Another theory is trade. The Himalayas did once serve as rough corridors between India, Tibet, and Central Asia. Could Rupkund have been a rest stop? An accidental trap along a poorly mapped trade path? But again, there's no historical map or artifact showing this was part of any known route. And why would Greek traders or Southeast Asian travelers venture so far off course only to freeze or be bludgeoned by hail in such numbers? Could it have been disease? A group struck down by sudden illness, leaving nothing behind but bones and confusion? Possibly. But bones don't show signs of cholera or plague. The fractures in the skulls suggest a violent, external cause. The hailstone theory, once folklore, gained traction with forensic analysis. The injuries were consistent with ice projectiles falling vertically from the sky. No defensive wounds, no lateral damage, just top-down trauma. But even that theory raises more questions. Hailstorms happen, but one's powerful enough to kill dozens of people simultaneously? Multiple times across centuries? And in the same exact spot? Then there's the possibility no one wants to seriously consider ritual sacrifice. Could this be where people went to die, intentionally? Alone or in groups, seeking some kind of purification or transcendence? Some cultures practiced end-of-life pilgrimages, voluntary death in remote sacred locations. But nothing found at Rup Kund so far confirms that idea. No symbols of transcendence, no burial mounds, just abandoned skeletons. The mystery deepens as time passes. Climate change melts more ice, revealing new remains. Yet even as more bones surface, answers do not. Every discovery only adds complexity. Why here? Why again and again? And how did these people from opposite ends of the world find this place without GPS, maps, or written instructions? Something brought them here. Something killed them. And something has kept the secret for more than 1,000 years. High in the Peruvian Andes, at an altitude where even the clouds feel thin and distant, lies a forgotten stone fortress, Sacsayhuaman. Built by the Inca, but that's only part of the story. Towering stone blocks, some weighing over 120 tons, fit together so tightly that not even a blade of grass can slip between them. No mortar, no filler, just perfect seams curved, sloped, and polished like a stone puzzle solved with divine precision. From a distance, the walls look almost like organic rock formations. But up close, it becomes clear. Every angle is deliberate, every stone meticulously carved. The site spans an entire hillside above modern-day Cusco, its outer walls forming massive zigzag terraces. Archaeologists agree the Inca used Sacsayhuaman as a ceremonial and military site. But there's a problem. The Inca Empire reached its peak in the 15th century. Yet some stones at Sacsayhuaman appear far older, weathered by centuries more erosion than Inca stonework elsewhere. So who built the oldest parts? And how? The Inca, for all their brilliance, did not possess iron tools or the wheel. They didn't use draft animals for heavy labor. According to traditional accounts, they moved these stones using ropes, wooden rollers, and sheer manpower. But imagine dragging a 120-ton stone uphill without wheels, cranes, or steel chisels. Then shaping it to fit a curved surface on another block, without a single misalignment. Even with modern engineering, recreating such precision using hand tools would be a near impossible feat. Some researchers suggest the Inca inherited the site, building upon foundations left by a much earlier, unknown culture. Legends among the Quechua people speak of a race of giants, or gods, who molded stone as if it were clay. That sounds like myth until you see the stones yourself. There's a kind of logic-defying elegance in the way the walls twist and interlock, almost as if the builders were manipulating something soft rather than chipping away at granite. How did they carve the odd, bubble-like protrusions still visible on some blocks? Why are some fitted with complex, multi-angled joints, while others sit in a serpentine curve? This wasn't just utilitarian architecture. It was advanced engineering, guided by aesthetic instinct. If it were only Sacsayhuaman, perhaps it could be dismissed as an anomaly. But similar masonry appears across the Andean region, from Ollantaytambo to Machu Picchu, to the mysterious ruins of Pumapunku in modern Bolivia. In each case, we see massive blocks, razor-fitted joints, and architectural decisions that defy explanation. So what happened? Was there once a lost civilization with knowledge far beyond what we've assumed? Or have we underestimated the capabilities of ancient Andean societies, imposing our own assumptions about what primitive people could do? Mainstream scholars lean toward cultural continuity, arguing that the Inca achieved their feats through organized labor, time, and unmatched skill in stonework. And perhaps that's true. But even then, one question remains unanswered. Why go to such extremes? Why build with stones too massive to move easily, when smaller ones would suffice? Why create jigsaw joints and megalithic seams that serve no defensive purpose? Was there a symbolic or cosmic reason? An alignment with earthquakes, the stars, or deeper metaphysical beliefs? Or were these structures meant to outlast memory itself, to become eternal markers in a world doomed to forget its origins? In recent years, attempts to unravel the mystery of Sacsayhuaman have relied on more than just mythology. Engineers, stonemasons, and architects have studied the site extensively, trying to reverse engineer the techniques used. One theory suggests the stones were carved using harder rocks like diorite, a form of primitive pounding and abrasion. But this method would require thousands of hours for a single block, and offers no answer to how multiple interlocking surfaces were shaped to fit together perfectly. Others propose water and sand techniques, or chemical softening using local plant acids. But no conclusive evidence has emerged for such practices. The sheer scale and polish of the work defy easy explanations. More puzzling still is the earthquake resistance built into the structure. Peru is a seismically active region, and yet Sacsayhuaman has withstood centuries of violent tremors, while modern structures in Cusco have crumbled. Some researchers believe the zigzag design and irregular shapes distribute energy evenly, making the structure inherently quake-resistant. If true, that would imply not just craftsmanship, but a deep understanding of geotechnical forces, an engineering sophistication far beyond what we typically attribute to pre-industrial cultures. There's also the matter of the site's spiritual and symbolic function. Sacsayhuaman was not merely a fortress. In Inca cosmology, the city of Cusco was shaped like a puma, the fortress forming the head, its jagged walls resembling the animal's teeth. This metaphorical layout suggests that the builders viewed space not just in practical terms, but through a mythic lens. The walls themselves appear to follow hidden symmetries and patterns. Some researchers even claim they align with magnetic anomalies or energy lines running through the earth. That might sound like pseudoscience, but it's worth remembering that ancient cultures often integrated astronomy, ritual, and architecture in ways modern minds find difficult to untangle. Could Sacsayhuaman have served as a kind of amplifier for celestial energy? A site where rituals tied to solstices and equinoxes were enhanced by the stones themselves. The alignments of shadows, light, and sound at the site do raise compelling questions. During certain solar events, shadows fall precisely across key blocks, suggesting deliberate orientation. Acoustic tests reveal that specific areas within the complex reverberate sound in unusual ways. Were these properties accidental? Or was the site acoustically engineered for chants, music, or ceremonies? Then there's the unexplained absence of tools. Despite decades of excavation, no chisels, hammers, or construction devices have ever been found near the oldest sections. No ramps, scaffolds, or quarries large enough to explain the movement of such stones. It's as if the methods were deliberately erased or never left any trace to begin with. That silence, the archaeological void, is as telling as the stones themselves. We are left with masterfully carved structures, but no manual. No inscriptions, no blueprints, no clues. Just massive stones whispering a language we no longer understand. The more we study them, the more elusive the truth becomes. Were the builders simply brilliant engineers whose knowledge died with them? Or did they tap into techniques, materials, or energies now lost to time? Sacsayhuaman stands not just as a marvel of construction, but as a challenge, a statement carved into the mountainside that dares us to explain the impossible. And for now, despite our science, measurements, and theories, the stones are still winning. High in the rugged mountains of Pakistan's Balochistan province lies a windswept rock formation so precise in appearance that for decades it was dismissed as a trick of erosion. But as aerial photos began to circulate, researchers noticed something odd. The face staring back from the cliffside bore too many human-like features to ignore. A chiseled forehead, sunken eyes, a long straight nose, lips sealed in eternal silence. They called it the Balochistan Sphinx. Towering more than 40 meters tall, this mysterious formation overlooks the Arabian Sea with an eerily composed expression, as if waiting for something or guarding it. For decades, mainstream geologists insisted this was a natural structure, the result of wind and rain carving the sandstone over time. But others saw more than coincidence. They noted that the surrounding area wasn't just remote, it was riddled with structures that appeared unnaturally symmetrical. Steps carved into the hillside, platforms that looked like temple bases, rectilinear walls and sharp angles that didn't match the randomness of erosion. Independent researchers, using drone footage and satellite imaging, began mapping the region and found what they believed to be a massive archaeological site buried beneath layers of sediment and overgrowth. They suggested the Sphinx was not an isolated formation, but part of a sprawling ancient complex long forgotten. The idea sparked controversy. If true, this would be one of the oldest megalithic sites on Earth, predating the Egyptian Sphinx by thousands of years. But without excavation permits or institutional interest, formal studies stalled. Pakistan's volatile security situation made scientific expeditions difficult. And so, the mystery lingered, caught between natural wonder and forbidden history. What lends the theory weight is not just the shape of the Sphinx itself, but its uncanny resemblance to ancient Indian temple architecture. Observers have noted similarities between the supposed complex and Dravidian styles found in South India stepwells, tiered towers, pillared halls. This raises unsettling questions. Could there have once been a lost civilization here, with cultural links to early India? A civilization advanced enough to carve monumental faces into cliffsides and construct temples out of solid rock? And if so, why has it vanished so completely? Mainstream archaeologists remain skeptical. They argue that pareidolia, the brain's tendency to see faces in random patterns, is likely at play. And without proper excavations, there's no way to distinguish structure from coincidence. But the arguments cut both ways. If this is merely erosion, why does the formation display vertical symmetry rarely seen in natural features? Why do the eyes appear recessed and proportional, the lips defined, the head adorned with what looks like a headdress? Add to this the fact that the area is seismically active and subject to weathering, yet the formation remains remarkably preserved. For a face supposedly shaped by chaos, its expression is disturbingly composed, its gaze unwavering. Critics argue that modern imaging exaggerates the features, that shadows and angles conspire to trick our perception. But others counter. Then let us test it. Excavate, measure, date, confirm. Yet no serious effort has been made, and so the face remains, half buried in silence, half cloaked in sand. It offers no explanation, no context, no culture to claim it. Just a colossal riddle staring westward over the sea, challenging us to prove it wrong. If it's merely a rock, it's the most provocative accident in geological history. If it's not, then we're ignoring one of the greatest archaeological discoveries of our time. The possibility that the Balochistan Sphinx is not a natural formation, but a weathered monument, raises broader implications. Because if this site was indeed carved by ancient hands, then we are forced to ask by whom? The region offers no supporting texts, inscriptions, or oral traditions. No legends passed down through generations. No gods, no kings, no origin myths. Just silence. This absence is what makes the theory so unsettling. Most great civilizations leave behind clues tools, pottery, symbols, language. Even in ruins, they whisper their story. But the Balochistan Sphinx whispers nothing. It exists in a vacuum, a relic with no ancestry. Some researchers, unable to reconcile this void, have turned to unconventional theories. They suggest it may predate even known human civilizations, that it could be the work of a lost race, erased by cataclysm or buried by time. These ideas flirt with taboo in academic circles, but they persist because the formation itself refuses to be dismissed. If it were located in Egypt or Peru or Greece, its excavation would be prioritized. But here, in a politically unstable region with minimal archaeological infrastructure, it becomes easier to ignore, to classify it as a rock and move on. This dismissal, however, has not deterred independent investigators. Over the years, drone surveys have revealed other peculiar structures near the site formations, resembling stepped terraces, rectangular enclosures, and what looks like a collapsed entrance to a buried chamber. Some claim these may be temple complexes, housing or ceremonial platforms. Critics say it's wishful thinking, but the geometry, the scale, the repetition, they challenge that skepticism. Natural processes rarely produce straight lines and right angles on such a large scale. And the broader region Makran coast has long been underexplored. Ancient maritime trade routes once passed near these shores. Greek, Persian, and Indian civilizations all had contact with the area. Could there have been a pre-Indus Valley culture that left its mark here before vanishing completely? Some even speculate that this coastline, once above sea level, may conceal submerged ruins lost to rising seas or tectonic shifts. Underwater scans of nearby inlets have revealed anomalies, block-like shapes and terraces resting beneath the waves. Nothing conclusive, but enough to provoke more questions. Why has no major institution undertaken a serious excavation or underwater study? Why are there no carbon dating efforts, no soil core samplings, no LiDAR mapping? The tools exist. The silence doesn't stem from lack of means, it stems from a lack of will. Perhaps because to dig too deeply here would threaten established timelines. A monument this large, in this location, with no cultural lineage. What does that say about what we think we know? If we admit this could be artificial, then we must also admit our history books are incomplete. And that's a truth many institutions are hesitant to embrace. Until then, the Balochistan Sphinx stands untouched, its true nature obscured by sand, politics, and willful neglect. Whether it's a trick of nature or the remnant of a forgotten age, it demands more than silence. Because sometimes, the oldest truths lie not in what we remember, but in what we've chosen to forget. And this face in the stone, still watching, still waiting, may one day force us to remember what we lost. In the heart of Guatemala's Petén Basin, where thick rainforest swallows sound and sweltering heat warps perception, lies one of the most perplexing archaeological discoveries of the 21st century. In 2018, researchers using LiDAR light detection and ranging pierced through the dense jungle canopy with precision laser pulses. What they uncovered wasn't just remarkable, it was staggering. Hidden beneath centuries of vegetation were the outlines of massive ancient cities, interconnected by highways, canals, and agricultural terraces. Over 60,000 previously unknown structures, fortresses, pyramids, causeways emerged in ghostly resolution. And they weren't scattered settlements. They were urban centers, rivaling the complexity of modern metropolitan design. The revelation shattered previous assumptions about the Maya civilization. Long believed to be scattered city-states surrounded by forest, the new evidence suggested a highly organized, expansive empire. Millions of inhabitants spread across a landscape thought to be too hostile for large-scale habitation. But the mystery isn't just the scale, it's the silence. Such an advanced civilization should have left clear evidence of its collapse. Mass graves, sudden cultural changes, destruction layers, yet the jungle keeps its secrets. The transition from thriving megacities to overgrown ruins appears eerily smooth. No signs of conquest, no great fire, just abandonment. What could cause a civilization of millions to vanish so completely? Climate shifts, internal conflict, disease? All of these have been proposed, yet none fully explain the rapidity and totality of the disappearance. Adding to the mystery are the anomalies in design and planning. Some of the newly discovered pyramids are geometrically perfect, to a degree difficult to achieve even with modern tools. The angles, the alignments, the proportions. They suggest either a lost architectural methodology or a form of knowledge that historians still struggle to explain. Then there's the astronomical precision. Several causeways and temple alignments correspond exactly with celestial events. Solstices, equinoxes, even lunar cycles. This isn't unusual in ancient architecture. But the consistency across vast distances is. How did disconnected cities, separated by hundreds of kilometers, build structures with synchronized astronomical alignment? What network of communication or shared cosmology enabled this? And if it existed, why do no records survive to describe it? Maya writing is one of the most sophisticated of the ancient world. We have texts on kingship, astronomy, rituals. But not one codex details this urban blueprint. Not one inscription explains the sudden silence. And perhaps most haunting of all, some of the structures found using LiDAR are located beneath known ruins. That is, they predate what we thought were the oldest Maya cities. Inverted timelines, older beneath newer, suggesting that the civilization didn't just vanish, it was built atop something older. Something we know even less about. Who were these pre-Maya builders? Did they possess knowledge that was later lost or erased? Were the Maya the inheritors of an even earlier intelligence? One that left behind no name, no language, only stone and shadow? For now, we have no answers. Only more questions. The rainforest keeps its secrets well. But beneath every tree root and moss-covered temple, there may lie the truth about a civilization more ancient and enigmatic than we ever imagined. Over the past few decades, scientists and archaeologists have attempted to pierce the mystery of Cambyses' vanished army using cutting-edge technology. It began in the late 1990s, when two Italian researchers, Angelo and Alfredo Castiglione, led an expedition into Egypt's western desert. Their team uncovered fragments of bronze weapons, remnants of pottery, and even skeletal remains, all scattered across a remote, wind-blasted stretch of desert far from any modern path. At first glance, it seemed they had finally found proof. The fragments matched Persian craftsmanship, and the bones appeared ancient. Yet further testing soon dismantled the excitement. Radiocarbon dating revealed the remains were from the Roman era, centuries after Cambyses' campaign. Once again, the trail went cold. In the early 2000s, researchers turned to satellite imagery scanning the Great Sand Sea, a vast stretch of shifting dunes covering thousands of square kilometers. NASA's high-resolution data revealed nothing. No formations, no equipment, no human disturbance. In 2009, a team led by Egyptian archaeologist Zahi Hawass launched another expedition, armed with ground-penetrating radar, metal detectors, and infrared mapping devices. Their search spanned weeks. Their methods were precise. Their scans reached meters beneath the desert's surface. And yet, like all who came before, they found nothing. No mass grave, no rusted weapons, no traces of ancient passage. Even the sand itself was silent, showing no sign it had ever been disturbed by 50,000 marching men. This absence is not just frustrating, it's unnerving. Science explains erosion, decomposition, and the harsh effects of the desert. But even under those conditions, something should remain. A buckle, a bronze fragment, a buried helmet. Instead, there's only silence. Some argue the entire story might be exaggerated or fabricated, an embellishment by ancient historians like Herodotus. But other ancient records, Persian and Egyptian, also reference the army, its departure, and its unexplained disappearance. The army existed. That much is clear. What isn't clear is how nature or something else could erase it so completely. Could a massive sandstorm, the kind Herodotus described, bury an army so deeply that not even modern technology could find it? It's possible, but unlikely. A storm of that scale would have left geological evidence layers of compressed sand or anomalies detectable by radar. None were found. Some suggest the army never made it far, that they perished early and their remains were destroyed by time. But again, 50,000 men leave traces. Campsites, bones, metal. The absence of even a single identifiable item across the vast desert is an anomaly in itself. And so the mystery persists, not for lack of trying, not for lack of science, but because what's missing isn't just the army. It's every logical explanation for why we still can't find them. In an age of satellites and sensors, it's almost comforting and a little terrifying that some mysteries remain out of reach. As if the desert chose to keep this one secret for itself, forever untouched beneath its eternal shifting sands. High in the Indian Himalayas, hidden beneath clouds and snowfields, lies a place that shouldn't exist. A frozen lake at the foot of desolate peaks, unremarkable in size, unassuming in appearance, and yet filled with something profoundly disturbing. Its name is Rupkund, but most know it by another name, Skeleton Lake. For decades, this small glacial lake has puzzled scientists, historians, and spiritual pilgrims alike. Every summer, as the ice melts, it reveals hundreds of human skeletons lying exposed in shallow waters and along the rocky shoreline. Bones, skulls, rib cages, some stacked, some alone, all eerily preserved in the cold, dry air. When first discovered in 1942 by a British forest ranger, the site sparked immediate speculation. Was this the scene of a forgotten massacre? A cursed pilgrimage? A lost army? Each theory pointed in a different direction, yet none could fully explain the scale or strangeness of what was found. Early studies suggested a single catastrophic event. A group of travelers, perhaps pilgrims, caught in a sudden storm, killed by exposure, their bones left to bleach beneath the mountain sun. But deeper analysis soon complicated the picture. Forensic testing revealed fractures in the skulls, uniform, rounded, and blunt. Not wounds from weapons, not signs of disease, but trauma consistent with something falling hard, fast, and spherical. Researchers proposed an extraordinary possibility: a hailstorm. Not an ordinary one, but a rare and violent barrage of massive hailstones, possibly larger than baseballs. Such storms are rare, but not impossible in high altitudes. And with no shelter near the lake, the victims had nowhere to hide. The theory matched local legend. In nearby villages, oral history spoke of a king and his entourage, punished by a goddess for defiling sacred ground. The punishment: death from the sky. Hail as divine judgment. Myth aligning with forensic evidence. A compelling convergence. But science wasn't finished. In 2019, a new study shattered previous assumptions. Genetic analysis of 38 skeletons revealed something strange. The dead did not come from a single group or a single time. Some were South Asian, as expected, but others were Mediterranean, likely from modern-day Greece or Crete. Stranger still, the two groups were separated not just by geography, but by centuries. The South Asian remains dated to the 7th or 8th century. The Mediterranean ones, almost 1,000 years later. Rupkund was not the site of one tragedy, but several. Events spaced out across time, yet converging in a single deadly location. This revelation deepened the mystery. Why did people from such distant places across so many centuries journey to this remote lake? Why did none return? And how did they all meet the same fate? Even more unsettling, why were there so few artifacts? No weapons, no jewelry, no signs of battle or theft. Just bones, isolated and unburied, as if the lake collected them, quietly, deliberately, repeatedly. For some, Rupkund became a symbol of nature's indifference. For others, a sacred site marked by divine wrath. But to science, it remains a riddle layered in ice, bone, and centuries of silence. One that resists explanation, even in the age of DNA and satellites. Despite decades of investigation, Rupkund remains an archaeological paradox. Recent expeditions equipped with drones, satellite imaging, and ground-penetrating radar have revealed even more bones, some hidden deep beneath layers of ice and sediment. Yet no clear pattern emerges, no shared cause of death, no obvious signs of mass migration or ritual sacrifice. Instead, the evidence is fragmented. Human remains scattered across centuries. Different ancestries, different time periods, all bound by the same destination and the same fate. Rupkund, it seems, is less a singular event and more a geographic anomaly, a place where people die. But why they go there, and how they end up in the same watery grave, remains unresolved. Some researchers now suspect Rupkund may have been part of an ancient pilgrimage route. Sacred paths have long crisscrossed the Himalayas, connecting remote shrines hidden in the mountains. If Rupkund lay along such a route, perhaps travelers stopped there to rest, only to fall victim to extreme weather, altitude sickness, or natural disasters. But this theory still doesn't explain the Mediterranean remains. Why would Greeks or Cretans venture into such inhospitable terrain with no known cultural ties? Some propose trade routes. Others point to rogue exploration. None of these answers satisfy, especially when no artifacts suggest commerce or purposeful settlement. Then there's the eerie uniformity of death. Fractures on the skulls suggest blunt trauma. But from what? A renewed hailstorm? A sudden rock slide? Or something entirely different, an event we have no modern equivalent for? Adding another layer of strangeness, local villagers continue to treat the lake with wary respect. Stories persist of strange lights seen at night, whispers of voices echoing in the cold air, and dreams shared among those who spend too much time near the water's edge. Dreams of drowning in silence, of bones rising through the ice. Folklore, perhaps. But in places like this, where science stumbles, legends find fertile ground, and the legends don't stop. Some believe the lake chooses its victims, that it calls to certain people travelers, wanderers, seekers, and pulls them in. Not physically, not with force, but with something subtler, a whisper, a feeling, an unshakable urge to go further into the mountains than is wise. The sort of lure that has no explanation, just bones as evidence. Skeptics dismiss these ideas as romantic nonsense. And maybe they're right. Maybe Rupkund is nothing more than a coincidence of geography and climate. A deadly spot on an ancient trail, a place where people made poor decisions in poor conditions. But even then, the numbers raise eyebrows. Hundreds of skeletons, spanning cultures, separated by centuries, all in one lake, all struck down. And no other site on Earth shares this pattern. No parallel, no known analog. Theories abound: hail, hypothermia, altitude, starvation. But none are conclusive. None explain why Rupkund collects the dead like no other place. It's a mystery suspended between earth and sky, between science and myth. And until more evidence emerges, it remains one of the world's most unsettling open cases. A frozen lake that remembers what we forget. A graveyard without graves. A question etched in ice. In the sweltering deserts of southern Peru, etched into the earth across a barren plateau, lies a network of lines so vast they can only be seen from the sky. Straight lines extending for kilometers, spirals, trapezoids, and most curiously, massive figures of animals, monkeys, hummingbirds, spiders, whales, alongside odd humanoid forms with massive eyes and twisted limbs. These are the Nazca Lines. Created between 500 BCE and 500 CE by a people who left no written records and whose intentions remain elusive, the Nazca Lines stretch across more than 50 miles of scorched desert. Their scale is bewildering. Some figures span hundreds of meters, each shape formed by removing the dark surface stones of the desert, exposing the pale clay beneath. That's it. No pigments, no stone carvings, just subtraction. And yet the designs remain perfectly preserved after centuries, thanks to the arid climate and lack of wind. From the ground, you'd walk right over them and see nothing. But from the sky, they become unmistakable. Which raises the obvious question: how could an ancient civilization with no aircraft have conceived and executed designs only visible from above? Mainstream archaeology offers plausible answers. The Nazca used rudimentary surveying tools: ropes, wooden stakes, gridded patterns. Experimental archaeologists have replicated small-scale versions using only these basic tools. Still, the precision and consistency of the real lines are unnerving. No evidence of mistakes, no abandoned attempts, no signs of trial and error, just clean, confident execution. So why make them at all? Theories abound. Maria Reiche, the German mathematician who devoted her life to mapping and preserving the lines, believed they were astronomical in nature, giant calendars, or celestial maps. Some align with solstices, others point toward water sources or sacred mountains. But many don't. A 300-foot spider has no known astronomical significance. Nor does a stylized monkey with 9 curled fingers. So the astronomical theory only explains part of the picture. Another idea: the lines were ceremonial pathways. Priests may have walked them during rituals, invoking rain or fertility. In a desert climate where water means survival, desperate measures seem reasonable. And yet, again, the theory has gaps. Some geoglyphs don't connect to pathways. Some are isolated. Others overlap in ways that suggest layered purposes or shifting beliefs across centuries. Then come the fringe theories. Erich von Däniken famously claimed the lines were ancient runways for alien spacecraft, pointing to their scale and visibility from the sky. Others argue they were signals meant for sky gods, or even maps left behind by an older, forgotten civilization. These ideas, though sensational, lack hard evidence. But their persistence speaks to a deeper truth. No theory mainstream or fringe fully explains the Nazca Lines. There's no single unifying purpose, no definitive proof, just the quiet confidence of a people who carved massive messages into the desert floor for reasons we may never understand. What did they believe? Who were they signaling? And why did they choose a canvas no one on Earth could see clearly unless they looked down from the clouds? In 2019, a major breakthrough reignited interest in the Nazca Desert. Researchers from Yamagata University in Japan, using satellite imagery and artificial intelligence, announced the discovery of over 140 previously unknown geoglyphs hidden in plain sight, nearly erased by erosion, or partially buried by the relentless march of time. Some were barely recognizable scratched outlines of llamas, birds, humanoid forms, or abstract geometries half swallowed by dust. Yet their presence confirmed a long-standing suspicion. The Nazca Lines are just the beginning. The scale of their expression is far greater than previously believed. These newer figures showed stylistic differences, less refined, more erratic, suggesting they may have been created by different groups or at different times. Were these designs the work of rival clans? Did the Nazca evolve their methods over time? Or were these symbols part of a much older cultural tradition absorbed and reimagined by the Nazca later on? That possibility raises uncomfortable questions about origins. Excavations near the lines have uncovered ritual offerings, ceramic jars, shells, and even human remains, suggesting that death, sacrifice, and symbolism were intimately connected to the lines. Some scholars suggest the desert served as an open-air ritual landscape. That's plausible. But why make figures the size of football fields? Why put them where no one could see them unless they were gods? Or in today's world, flying overhead? Even with our technology, it's hard to track or map them all. And so, the enigma deepens. NASA has conducted infrared scans of the desert, revealing hidden lines beneath layers of rock and dust, long forgotten and invisible to the naked eye. Drones and LiDAR have helped identify even more potential figures. Each new line found raises the same questions. What was its purpose and why here? No written texts survive from the Nazca people. No codices, no murals explaining the meaning of their desert canvases. It's like trying to interpret a message without knowing the language, context, or even who the author was. Adding to the mystery is the seeming randomness of the figures. Why a giant spider with legs positioned precisely to match an astrological constellation, visible only briefly in the night sky? Why a monkey with a spiral tail? Why so many straight lines that go nowhere, ending abruptly or intersecting other geoglyphs? Theories now intersect. Some say the lines mark underground water sources. Others suggest they point to pilgrimage routes. A few insist they're part of a vast pre-Incan memory system, encoding knowledge or beliefs in symbolic form. But there's a final, humbling truth. Despite satellites, AI, and decades of research, we still don't know. The Nazca Lines remain open-ended, an invitation to wonder, a challenge to interpret without overreaching. We see the shapes, we measure the angles, we trace the paths, but the intentions of those ancient hands remain invisible. Maybe that's the point. Maybe the lines weren't meant to be deciphered by us at all. Maybe they're not a message across time, but an offering made in the moment. meant for the gods alone. A prayer carved into the desert that only the sky could read. Imagine a mountain rising straight out of the Peruvian rainforest, its slopes steep and cloaked in cloud, its summit hidden more often than revealed. For centuries, locals spoke of ancient ruins somewhere high in the Andes' forgotten stone temples. Steps that led to nowhere, remnants of a city swallowed by vegetation and time. Then, in 1911, American explorer Hiram Bingham, guided by local farmers and driven by a romantic obsession with lost civilizations, stumbled upon what would become one of archaeology's most iconic discoveries: Machu Picchu. Perched nearly 8,000 feet above sea level and nestled between jagged mountain peaks, the site defied expectations. Its buildings were masterfully constructed from enormous stone blocks, cut with such precision that even modern tools struggle to replicate the fit. Staircases ascended between temples and terraces. Kennels diverted mountain streams with engineering that seemed more Roman than indigenous. For Bingham and those who followed, the question was immediate and haunting. Who built this, and why was it abandoned? The Inca, clearly, but the Inca Empire, for all its sophistication, left no written records that explain the site's true purpose. Spanish chroniclers never mentioned it. No conquistadors ever reached it. It was never looted, never razed, and its isolation preserved it like a fossil of imperial ambition. So what was Machu Picchu Citadel, sanctuary, observatory, or all of the above? Its layout hints at astronomical alignment. Windows in the Temple of the Sun line up perfectly with solstices. Carvings mirror constellations. Some believe Machu Picchu was a kind of cosmic map, a sacred replica of the heavens built on Earth. Others think it served as a royal estate for Pachacuti, the empire's legendary ninth ruler, a place of retreat and ritual, inaccessible to most. Then there are those who suggest it was built as a bridge between this world and the next. The site's location isn't arbitrary. It's wedged between two mountains the Inca believed were sacred. The river that snakes below, the Urubamba, was considered a mirror of the Milky Way. Every stone, every path, might have held symbolic weight, anchoring the spiritual to the physical. But that symbolism only deepens the mystery. If Machu Picchu was so important spiritually, politically, cosmologically, why was it left behind? Why did the Inca, with all their resilience, let the jungle reclaim one of their greatest achievements without so much as a record of its existence? Some archaeologists argue it was abandoned hastily, possibly due to plague or war. Others believe it was deliberately concealed to protect it from the Spanish, who destroyed similar sites across the Andes. But no bones were found in mass graves. No signs of battle or destruction exist. It's as if the people simply vanished, locking the doors behind them, leaving only the silence of stone and moss. Excavations have uncovered fewer than 200 burials, mostly women, many with cranial deformations, suggesting they were chosen or marked from birth. Were they priestesses or sacrifices? No one knows. What's clear is this: Machu Picchu was no ordinary settlement. It was a place of profound meaning, built with intention and knowledge we've only begun to decode. It remains a riddle in stone, a city that speaks in architecture, not words. As archaeological tools improve, Machu Picchu continues to reveal new layers of complexity and new contradictions. LiDAR scans and drone imagery have uncovered hidden agricultural terraces beyond the visible ones, suggesting the city supported a much larger population than once thought. Yet there are no signs of marketplaces, granaries, or permanent housing for commoners. It appears built not for survival, but ceremony. A theater, not a village. An elite retreat suspended between mountain and myth. The construction itself defies expectations. Stones weighing dozens of tons were transported without the wheel, over treacherous terrain, and fitted together without mortar so tightly that even a blade of grass cannot pass between them. Engineers still debate how it was done. Some propose earth ramps and timber levers. Others point to lost techniques we've never rediscovered. But none can fully replicate the craftsmanship. Not with our machines, not without leaving marks. And Machu Picchu has no marks, no scratches, no quarry waste, no trial cuts. Only finished surfaces and clean joints, like the work of sculptors, not masons. More strange is the acoustic architecture. Certain chambers carry sound in ways that feel designed. A whisper in the Temple of the Condor can be heard clearly across the courtyard. Chants echo with a hollow resonance in the room of the three windows. Whether intentional or coincidental, the effect lends the site a theatrical quality, as if it were built for voices not yet understood. Some researchers now believe Machu Picchu may have functioned as an initiatory center, where priests, royalty, and select individuals underwent spiritual transformation. The lack of mass habitation, the abundance of sacred geometry, the symbolic positioning of stairways and sight lines all suggest ritual over routine. But again, no records confirm this. Only architecture and silence. Excavations in recent years have uncovered burial mounds farther down the slopes. Some contain bodies wrapped in positions of fetal repose, accompanied by ceramics, tools, and gold leaf. The faces of the dead were turned east toward the rising sun. Was this an act of reverence or a farewell? And if so, to what? The Spanish never found Machu Picchu, and perhaps that was the point. Maybe it was meant to disappear, to fold back into the earth until the time was right. And when Bingham stumbled upon it in 1911, it was as if the mountain had exhaled, allowing its secret to surface. But even now, over a century later, that secret remains intact. Tourists crowd its stairways. Historians fill libraries with theories. Yet the purpose of Machu Picchu stays just out of reach. Always implied, never confirmed. A sacred city without a single inscription. A blueprint without a key. We measure its stones. We map its chambers. We calculate its alignments. But none of it brings us closer to why it was made. Only that it was. A masterpiece carved into the spine of the Andes, suspended between the earth and the gods, between knowledge and forgetting. And perhaps that's the final message. Not everything was built to be understood. Some things were built simply to endure. Deep in the heart of the Iraqi desert lies a ziggurat of silence. Towering above the flat Mesopotamian plain, the ancient city of Ur once stood as the beating heart of Sumerian civilization. But 200 miles to the northwest, buried beneath layers of dust and conjecture, lies something stranger, older than Ur, older than Sumer, older than writing itself. It's called Tel al-Ubaid, and at first glance, well, it looks like just another dusty mound. But under that sand, archaeologists have uncovered artifacts so out of place, they defy logic. Figurines, carved from stone, shaped like lizards, humanoid in form but reptilian in feature. Slanted eyes, scaled skin, long fingers. Some wear helmets. Others cradle infants with matching faces. They're not decorative. They're deliberate. And no one knows why. The Ubaid culture, dated to around 7,000 years ago, predates the Sumerians and left behind no written language. Only these statues, scattered among temple foundations and domestic ruins. For decades, archaeologists dismissed them as stylistic exaggerations, artistic flair, primitive gods. But that explanation grows thinner the more we find. There's too much consistency, too much precision. These aren't distortions, they're depictions, repeated and intentional. But of what and why? Some theorists, eager for patterns, propose a connection to reptilian deities mentioned in later Mesopotamian myths like Ningish Zida, the serpent god of the underworld. Others push further, suggesting the figurines represent actual beings encountered by early humans. Extraterrestrial visitors, hybrid species, a genetic memory embedded in stone. Mainstream archaeologists scoff at such ideas, citing lack of evidence. But absence is not evidence of absence. And Tel al-Ubaid offers very little of anything. No burial grounds, no palaces, no definitive function. Only these lizard-faced statues, silent and patient, waiting in the dark. Stranger still, similar motifs appear far beyond Mesopotamia. In the Indus Valley, serpent-headed beings guard temple thresholds. In pre-dynastic Egypt, carvings show humanoid creatures with scaled bodies and forked tongues. In Mesoamerica, Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, reigns as creator, bringer of knowledge, and destroyer. Are these parallels coincidence? Or fragments of some long-forgotten truth filtered through myth and memory? Some researchers point to altered states of consciousness, suggesting the figurines represent visions, dreams, or hallucinations experienced during ritual or trance. That's possible. Ancient cultures often used psychotropic plants to access spiritual realms. Perhaps what they saw they shaped in clay. But that only deepens the mystery. Why did so many, from so many places, see the same thing? The lizard, the serpent, the reptile with human eyes. Whether real or imagined, it mattered enough to immortalize. And in the absence of context, these artifacts float between categories, too detailed to be symbolic, too strange to be familiar. We label them with cautious terms: anthropomorphic, zoomorphic, possibly ceremonial. But the truth is simpler and more disturbing. We don't know. We've dug up the bones of empires, deciphered languages dead for millennia. Yet here, among the oldest layers of human habitation, we find silence shaped like a face not ours. Watching. In the 1990s, British museum archaeologists revisited Tel al-Ubaid with modern equipment, hoping to clarify the strange legacy of these figurines. They mapped structures, cataloged pottery, and analyzed soil layers. The settlement showed signs of organized society housing clusters, irrigation canals, clay tablets with proto-symbols. But nowhere did they find evidence explaining the statues. No temples specifically linked to them, no inscriptions, no rituals carved in stone, just scattered forms, broken and intact, unearthed in ordinary domestic settings, as if these figures were part of everyday life. One figurine, nicknamed the Lizard Mother, shows a scaled female cradling an infant. Her mouth is elongated, her eyes slanted, her fingers sharp and unnatural. Yet her posture is tender, maternal. It challenges our categories. It's not a demon, it's not a goddess, it's something else. An icon of something long forgotten or deliberately erased. Some researchers suggest the reptilian traits might symbolize transformation, rebirth, or a shamanic connection to underground realms. Serpents often represent knowledge or duality in ancient myths. But these are guesses. The Ubaid left no explanation. Meanwhile, new finds in southern Iraq have only complicated matters. In Eridu, another early Ubaid site considered by some to be the first city on Earth, similar figurines appeared, same posture, same features, same eerie reptilian calm. The repetition is too precise to be accidental. Were they depicting deities worshipped across multiple settlements? Or chronicling something remembered across generations? Some posit a more disturbing theory that these figures aren't religious at all, but historical. Memories fossilized in clay, visitors mistaken for gods, ancient contact narratives encoded in ritual and myth. As outrageous as it sounds, the theory gains strength not from proof, but from pattern. Reptilian beings appear again and again in ancient lore, from the Anunnaki of Mesopotamia, to the Naga of India, to the feathered serpents of Mesoamerica. Too specific to be coincidence, too widespread to be dismissed. The lizard face with human posture, always watching, always powerful. But if these beings were real, where did they go? And why did the memory of them fade into symbol? Others argue for a symbolic origin rooted in early human fears. Snakes, cold-blooded predators, and the unknown. Perhaps these forms were psychological projections, archetypes drawn from the earliest shadows of the mind. Carl Jung believed in a collective unconscious universal symbols hardwired into the brain. Could the Ubaid figurines be one such projection? A prehistoric attempt to visualize fear, transformation, or the boundaries between human and other? Still, this psychological lens doesn't explain their physical consistency. The helmets, the posture, the tools some figures hold. They're not chaotic or abstract. They're specific. Some wear belts, some have jewelry. These weren't made in trance, they were designed, replicated, intentional. Their distribution suggests reverence, but not worship. Familiarity, but not fear. Perhaps they were cultural ancestors, origin myths turned to stone, or maybe they were warnings. Regardless of interpretation, the Ubaid figurines remain one of archaeology's most disturbing puzzles. Unwritten, undecoded. They whisper from beneath the oldest floors we've uncovered, their expressions frozen between species. Eyes that aren't ours, hands that shouldn't exist, watching us dig century after century, still unable to answer the simplest question. What were they? In the heart of Bolivia, on the windswept Altiplano Plateau, nearly 13,000 feet above sea level, lies a ruin that defies conventional understanding, Puma Punku. At first glance, it looks like a scattering of stone blocks across a barren landscape. No soaring pyramids, no temples towering against the sky. Just colossal pieces of finely cut andesite and red sandstone tossed, broken, buried. But step closer, and the mystery sharpens. These aren't rough-hewn rocks. They're precision-engineered blocks. Smooth, polished surfaces. Right angles accurate to a fraction of a degree. Interlocking notches, drill holes, perfect symmetry. Some stones weigh over 100 tons. Others are cut into H-shaped joints that fit together like mechanical parts. And yet, this site is over 100 years old. According to archaeologists, it was part of the Tiwanaku culture, which thrived long before the Inca. But here's the problem. Even by Tiwanaku standards, Puma Punku is an anomaly. The engineering is far beyond what we expect from Bronze Age tools and techniques. The stone used is incredibly hard, some harder than iron, and had to be quarried miles away. Transported without wheels, cut without steel, and assembled at an altitude where oxygen is scarce, weather is brutal, and construction is difficult even today. Mainstream scholars suggest that rudimentary stone tools, copper chisels, and endless manpower could have achieved this. But the evidence doesn't match the claim. No copper chisels have been found at Puma Punku. No quarries with transitional cuts or half-finished blocks. No tools that could replicate the precision we see in the H-blocks or bored holes. It's as if the builders arrived with the exact pieces already shaped, then assembled them like an enormous stone puzzle. One theory suggests advanced lost knowledge, techniques forgotten through cultural collapse. Another points to acoustic levitation or vibrational cutting ideas rooted more in speculation than science. Still, These fringe theories exist because the conventional explanation feels insufficient. The scale and precision hint at either an unrecorded technological jump or a misdating of the site itself. Some researchers argue that Pumapunku might be far older than the Tiwanaku period, possibly built atop a much older foundation. Weathering patterns and geological analysis have prompted debate, with some claiming the stones have been exposed for much longer than a mere millennium. If true, that would place Pumapunku among the oldest engineered structures on Earth, rewriting South American prehistory. But the controversy doesn't stop there. Pumapunku features a level of symmetry often associated with industrial production. The blocks aren't random, they're modular, standardized, as if made using templates. This design logic doesn't resemble typical pre-Columbian styles. There's an eerie mechanical clarity to it, like architecture from a vanished blueprint. Ancient astronaut theorists have, of course, seized on Pumapunku. To them, it's an alien facility, an outpost of otherworldly visitors. The perfect cuts, the impossible logistics, the altitude, all too much for ancient humans. But again, there's no evidence of alien involvement. No tools, no artifacts, no texts, just stone. Perfectly silent, perfectly still, and perfectly unexplained. What makes Pumapunku so disturbing isn't the alien theories. It's the absence of everything else. No inscriptions, no idols, no burial sites. Just industrial-grade stonework in a place where none should exist. As if someone or something was testing geometry on a scale we still can't reproduce. What if Pumapunku isn't an outlier, but a remnant? A fragment of something bigger? Something older? Something we weren't supposed to find? Across the globe, we've uncovered scattered anomalies, cut stones in Baalbek, megaliths in Japan's Yonaguni, polygonal walls in Sacsayhuaman. None of them form a coherent lineage. They don't fit into the timeline of civilization. They just appear, perfect, precise, and unrepeatable. Pumapunku doesn't tell us who built it. It only tells us someone once did. Someone with knowledge far beyond what our textbooks allow. And then, they vanished. Left no texts, no tool, no bones. Only geometry, only silent proof. The unsettling part isn't the ruins. It's what their existence implies. That we're looking at the aftermath of a forgotten chapter of humanity. One erased not by time, but by design. That these stones weren't meant to communicate. They were meant to be buried, forgotten, lost beneath centuries of dust, war, and rewrites. Maybe the greatest mystery isn't how Pumapunku was built, but why we no longer remember who built it. We assume history is cumulative, that each generation builds on the last, that we know more now than ever before. But Pumapunku and places like it suggest a different truth, that perhaps history is not a staircase, but a circle, that civilizations rise, peak, collapse, and vanish, taking their secrets with them. And maybe, just maybe, we're not the first to wonder what came before. Consider this. If an advanced culture had once risen and fallen in deep antiquity, long before our own, how would we even know? Would their synthetic materials survive? Their books? Their satellites? Or would only their stone remain the hardest, most permanent trace of their existence? Perhaps Pumapunku is exactly that. Not a message, not a shrine, but a warning. A fossilized whisper in the high Andes saying, "You're not the first, and you won't be the last." In the end, Pumapunku stands not just as a marvel of lost engineering, but as a mirror, a silent monument reflecting back our arrogance, our assumption that we are the apex of human progress, that we understand the world, that the past is a closed book. But it's not. The past is a labyrinth, and Puma Punku is one of its doors. We may never know who shaped those stones, or how, or why. But maybe that's the point. Maybe some mysteries endure precisely because they were never meant to be solved. Because truth, when fully seen, breaks more than it explains. So we look. We speculate. We measure. We build simulations. But the stones remain, unchanged, untouched, unyielding. In a world of theories, Puma Punku remains fact. And that's what makes it terrifying. In the cold silence of Bolivia's highlands, beneath the vast blue of a forgotten sky, a forgotten geometry waits. Not for answers, not for recognition, just for someone to finally ask the right question. And maybe that question is this: what if everything we believe about the ancient world is wrong?